So my name is Hugh McGuire, and I'm the founder of Pressbooks, as well as the founder of LibriVox, and co-editor with Brian O'Leary of book of Futurist Manifesto. I was building Pressbooks, which is a online content management system for books. So it's a workflow tool for creating books online, but also outputs EPUBs and print. And as we were building it, I thought I really need to know what a professional publishing project is going to feel like going through this platform as we're building it, so that we can make it better for that environment. And so I had the idea to do a book about the future of the book, built on a platform that I think helps bring the book into the future. And I went to O'Reilly. I think I talked to Brian before I actually went to O'Reilly, and Brian thought it was a good idea, and I pitched it to O'Reilly, and they said that sounds like a good project. And then from there we started to think about what kind of content we wanted in the book, and started to sketch out a table of contents and the kinds of authors and articles that we wanted to have in there. And it flowed from there, but really the key idea was to try to build a book in this new platform, in this new way that I was trying to build as we were building the book. Yes, I think it's been a successful project on all the criteria that we set for it, or that I set for it. One was we wanted to make sure we could publish a book in a professional publishing context, and we did that. The files worked. We have a nice print version that came out of Pressbooks. We have a nice ebook version that came out of Pressbooks, and I think we learned a lot about the value of having that content open online and seeing the linkages to it, the conversation that happened around the book, which always was the most important thing for us. So I see regularly, I'd say every couple of days, there's a new link that pops up in my Twitter feed of someone pointing to a chapter in that book. So it still continues to spread in the way that we hoped it would. So yes, I think really on the whole it was a successful experiment, definitely.
So the links are the keys for the discovery. But as well, you talked about semantic tagging in London, I believe last year. How effective are they, and is it a practical thing to do for the publisher right now?
This particular book doesn't have lots of deep semantic tagging, semantic web tagging in the content itself, but because it's built as very well-structured content, well-structured markup, in a format that search engines like, people who are looking for the kinds of things that we talk about in this book find it very easily. And I think that really is the key, as you think about the job of a publisher, is really to put the content in front of the people who want that content. So I think the really deep semantic markup that I would like to see as the next step to these kinds of projects wasn't really built into part of this particular project, but at the same time it's a fully searchable, indexable web database essentially on the web that people are coming to from Google and elsewhere all the time. So I think it was successful on that count as well.
Yeah. So the link is the first step, and deep semantic is a future strategy.
I think so. Yeah. And I think the first premise we had, and the most exciting thing we saw, was the Google Analytics and the Twitter streams of people linking and coming to the book and knowing where they were coming from and what they were saying about the book in these online platforms. That to me was the most exciting thing. So Pressbooks comes out of it's really from my project LibriVox, which started 8 years ago now, which gets community of volunteers around the world to make audiobooks. And LibriVox was able to exist because of various free and easy tools that were accessible to regular people. And it seemed to me that if we could put together an audiobook publishing project on that scale, that surely we could make tools that enable book publishing to happen in that kind of way. So that was the starting point, I think, for thinking about Pressbooks. I think, it's interesting when you think of workflow. I think there's a very deep philosophical. It's not just a different kind of hammer. That there's a very deep philosophical difference of thinking about a workflow tool in the way that Pressbooks is, and that is really about what Brian talks about, which is it's a tool where the context is built in to the work itself. And so I don't think I would have said workflow a couple of years ago, but I think I understand the word workflow very differently than I did then. So Pressbooks really, it can be just a more efficient way to make books, but I think there's a much deeper philosophical thing that happens when you move that creation onto the web and into the network, and that's the most important thing with Pressbooks. I think that we're at the very earliest days of a transition that is going to be far more important than what we've seen between paper and ebook. The form of the ebook is really a facsimile of the form of the paper book in digital format. So I think to me the most important thing is not, as Brian says, is not to decide what the future is going to look like, but to make sure that you are prepared in the most flexible way possible for a different kind of future. I can imagine books that pull in different content based on the context of the reader at a particular time. Maybe because you're standing in Times Square in New York, that the book you're reading builds itself based on that context. Maybe eye recognition sees that you're getting bored with a passage, and so it shortens that passage and brings you to a more exciting part of the book. We don't know what kinds of things, but I think, again, as Brian says, the container is the least important thing. It's really going to be about the context built around the reader. And while it's hard to imagine what that's going to look like, the best way for publishers to prepare themselves to get there is to have their content in a format that's easily transformed into different kinds of containers and kinds of uses. So I think we are at the very early stages of a very huge change in how content is created, how it's discovered, how it's read. I think there's always going to be a place for the book that starts here and finishes there. That is a deeply ingrained cultural artifact that has stood the test of time, and I think it will continue to. But what's going to happen is we're going to start building other things on top of that fundamental text, and that's what I'm most excited about seeing happen. And I think that only happens when publishers start losing some of the control of the content and making it available for these kinds of experiments. I think if you want to work in publishing and you are a young person, I think the first thing you should do is start publishing books right away. And it's easy to do. I think anyone who starts to publish books outside of the traditional publishing context is going to understand things that most traditional publishers will try to train right out of you, to be honest. So I think it's a wonderful time to start thinking about new publishing models, and I think doing it on your own to start there's never been a better, easier time to do that. So that's what I would say.